20 tips for love. What in the world is this woman doing thinking that we can have 20 tips for love with an author's perspective is what she was told. But in reality, it's part of the nature of utilizing our souls to discuss those wisdoms that have been handed down over time. How many of us are looking to other authors to let us know what can be done in our heads, right? We're working with the minds, are we not, of many, about what it is to do the work of love of all. This is not about that, but that is where we all are in our hearts. What we're working with most often are the tips and tricks of souls, what some would say. We're not offering any tricks other than it's the idea that there are others who are out there utilizing tricks to come through with the vision of, I tried to worm my way into certain souls' hearts by being kind and generous at some point, and then I turned around and I flipped the switch. This is where Brenda is often saying, when people are looking at people as dynamic human beings, then we can understand that the complexity of love is all around us. And so when we say we've got 20 tips, it's usually about those expressions are of love. So anytime you see a person, right, that's an expression of love. But what we deny is the beauty of each soul in the idea of, are we talking about familial love, romantic love, or just love as a soul in this plane, perhaps? Many are working with other souls who also have those visions of what love is. And so we're going to break it down brick by brick, which is a foundation of what love of all of us is. And that's when people start to say, that's not what I'm really looking for. It's part of the process of loving yourself first and foremost, which we all do, whether we acknowledge it or not. But that's where our first helpline offer is coming in. Okay, many people are saying, I love who I am no matter what, even if people are degrading me in their minds. You will not say that when you go to the soul level. You will not say it's just in the minds of many, and it's not actually valid, or it's not actually an aspect of what I'm being told. People will pick up on different cues about what love is for each of us. Some people are more sensitive than others to the nuances of love. And this is why those poets of old, right, or those authors of old often used a lot of wordsmithing in order to create those dynamic expressions that allowed for us to express the dynamic expressions of love versus the tips of love, which are more about, let's be kind to our neighbors, right? That's a kind situation. So often the idea that kindness counts is where Brenda is. Most people will understand what that means. Okay, so kindness does count. This is one aspect of where she's creating from. Kindness counts. Pragmatism is also part of her discovery process, which is sometimes we cut to the quick and we just say what needs to be said. Love is all around us. Are we open to receive it? Now, this is where Brenda has to understand that this is the first tip of many. We have to be open to receive the love from whoever we think we want, right? It's from whomever gives it to us. But what we're thinking is that, oh no, I'm not open to love from these souls because these souls have some aspect about them that is somehow disregarding of who I am in my mind. And so that's why those souls who are in the vision of I am blank and you are blank are not in the vision of we are. And that's why Brenda is more of that we are often, but she has her moments of I am this and I need to be doing this. Okay, so it's not about disregarding your own intuition or your own understanding of each other in order to see each other as beautiful. But what you have to understand is there's a compromise and then there's a collaboration. And many people are working with compromises in their hearts, and then that is being looked at as a negative by many. But in many cases, compromise is needed in order to get each other's needs met. So it doesn't have to be taken as a negative. It's just more a dynamic of compromise that many are working through. Okay, and this can happen in many kinds of relationships. Okay, so if we aren't aware of what compromise really means, okay, it doesn't mean I compromise my core values, right? Sometimes we have to in order to save another person's life. Okay, Brenda is here to tell you that she's had to do this compromising her moral values. She's very subjective in what morality actually means. She would rather utilize the word ethics rather than morals, because others are saying they have a moral compass that's based on some other source other than the own inner workings. But those inner workings were based on the idea that my experience of a book or a system or whatever is telling me that I can't be something other than what I am in each moment and each breath. That's where Brenda is. So she holds lightly to any of those values, for the most part, that are not deeply ingrained as kind for many of us. But she is not kind-hearted to some in their minds, because if they can't be open to the nature of what the truth is telling us from the soul level, that they are beautiful and wise and discerning in their hearts, but that they are expressing themselves on this plane in a way that would be most likely guided differently if it was causing issues for many people. And this is why she wins those wars of words. Okay? It's not about saying we're at war. But in essence, if we come into the vision that we can understand why the others are where they are or who they are, then we can start to utilize our compassion to say, yes, I understand this person is having an issue with X, Y, or Z, and it may be that that is where they need to be in order to learn from the experiences that they are gaining or garnering that allows them to heal from the pain that they will receive from that kind of vision. We are not here to stop all pain. That's another vision for love. Love can mean learning from pain. Okay? We don't always do what's best for the other person is another value. Okay? Because sometimes what's best for the other person is a degrading of our own hearts and minds. Okay? That's what some souls will say. This is what's best for me in this moment. And in doing so, they expect you to do that as well. That is where certain conditions of the soul is saying it's not wise for many men to be on the screen, right? George Clooney was coming through for her saying he learned from her in her wisdom, but he also understands his own unique perspective based on the Catholic Church in which he was raised. Okay, and so he disregarded that vision and said, I learned more from my upbringing than I did the nature of any system, perhaps, that he actually participated in as a child. And it doesn't mean that it's not a valued experience. It means that it's an experience that allowed him to see more of who he was from different points of view. So he has the experience of, I'm not going to degrade everyone who's in religious upbringing. What I will do is say it's not for me. And that's where Brenda is. It's not for me. But she also knows what's coming, and so she's hoping that others will start to see the patterns of the future as they start to appear on the screen. But that's for another day. The next tip, and we aren't going to be getting through all 20, but it is part of the nature of it's going to be a lot. So we'll see where we go with this. 10 years into a relationship, many people are starting to feel the fatigue of it. That's where Brenda will talk about the nature of fatigue of soul. We can get into that nature with our spouses, our friends, our loved ones, and we have to start to see what that fatigue might be. Okay, the fatigue of soul vision can be that I see the writing on the wall, or I see the pictures in my mind of those souls who are aligning with me and allowing for me to have a better experience of who I am. What does that mean for many? Usually that is in the vision of like attracts like. The variety of our souls can also bring us the wisdom, but many are more in the idea that I like feeling good about who I am, and those who align with me also make me feel better. And that's a good way to be. But if Brenda is truthful, she'll say, sometimes I like going for those souls that are a little bit more difficult for me, because in essence, I do learn and grow from them. I've had plenty of experience with souls who are not like me. And this is one of those cases, because in essence, she looks to those opposites sometimes and she says, whoa, that is such an intense personality that it can be overwhelming to my emotional system or to my nervous system in essence, because I'm such a sensitive soul. And so then I tend to disregard their wisdom, which is that they have their own expressions that need to be outlaid there for the public to see and experience. So we want to be more open to the nature of ourselves as personalities or as humans as well. This isn't just about soul attraction or soul vision. Soul attraction is very much on the minds of many, but we're going to keep it more general and loose. Okay? Now, the values of our souls are often on the forefront of who we are as well. And many will say, my values determine my worth. And we're letting you know that it is not exactly true. You can indeed find worth in the values that you create with, but values are a subjective experience of the place and time in which you vibrate. And this is what people are starting to understand. So what we'd say is understand the nature of the past and the present and where we might be heading when we go into the vision of love as soul versus loving all of us in this moment, where others are finding themselves through different aspects of my values or my worth. Brenda's working with the idea of worth with several souls, and she says, I have embodied my own soul as the vision of who I am always, and I always love who I am, whether or not I feel like it or not. Because I know what's coming for me, right? She's a future-oriented soul as well, and she says, I will help you gain that worth if you're feeling the lack of it. But it's not there inherent within you. Usually it is more about what others around us are projecting onto us or what others are, quote, seeing in us. Brenda does her own projections. Let's put it that way. But she's more about let's find out what it really is so we can unpack it, uncover it, and then let it go. Okay, often it's a letting go. Say, oh, it was just because of this or this or this. So we want to be open to the idea of the letting go. And the letting go of those values sometimes are the loving thing to do for not only yourself, but your loved ones. Okay, this can be a loving wisdom for people who are in those families of values and they say this value system isn't serving either myself or my family anymore. Okay. That's very common, and people will branch out and start doing different things. So be open to the nature of letting go of certain values. That might be a trigger spot for some because some are very ingrained in those values of traditional values, thinking they know exactly what they are, but it's often conditioned values. Not traditional. Tradition has very little to do with any value system. People will claim this is tradition. No, my friends, it is not. It depends on where you were in this place and time because marriage was a construct of society at a certain point in time and in certain systems. So we're going to talk about that at some point too. Now, the by nature of who we are is also a letting go of the nature of soul. Souls are very fluid in their sexuality in some instances. Others are more defined in their wisdom. Others come into the nature of I'm perceiving myself as female, but I feel more male. And this is why many will drop off, because they are conditioned in the traditional values of soul that says that they are either a man or a woman. It could be that their lives have been in the vision of, I have portrayed myself more as a male in my soul, which is the whole soul. And therefore, when they come into the vision of a female, they might feel a little disconnect from that nature of who they are as soul. This is why people will often tell people, don't worry about your sexual drive or your energy, because it's all getting worked out on the soul level. Okay? And so we want people to understand that there's no shame in having attraction for any sex or any sort of vision of what that is portrayed as. There's no shame in that on the soul level. We don't go there with souls. Okay? It is what it is, and each soul has its own memories and wisdom of attraction, and that is where Brenda gets attacked by certain souls saying, I know what the soul of love is, and it would say that there is only men and women. My friends, you are not on the right track with that book. That book is about loving everybody or kindly disagreeing with others. And that's why Brenda's there saying, I understand where that vision is often coming from, and it has its wisdom within it, but many things are not of soul level understanding, but personal preferences from this plane, because the hands of men have been upon it. And it is a wisdom that is still there for you. If you feel like that is your attraction zone, be very proud and wise in what you think you know about the soul of all, or the soul of one, right? So very few people are going to be wise to what it is to attract souls who are more open and free in their discovery of who they are as souls, versus those who are very compact and integrated into the nature of the love of who we are as souls. So even those who disagree are loved and challenged in some circles to empower themselves to be free and clear in their own vibration, to love everybody, but not agree with everybody. That's the difference. So we would say letting others disagree with you is another beautiful expression of love. And letting them express their joy at disagreeing with you. This is where we are with Brenda, right? She loves being disagreed with because it challenges her to open up to other perspectives, or she's wiser than most in how to sit there and see what's really going on underneath the surface. If she taps into your soul, that's going to be a whole different kind of experience for you. But it's not about labeling you bad or good or uneducated or undervalued or whatnot. Everyone's having different experiences of the growth process in which we vibrate on this plane. Okay, so we understand that everyone has their cultural attributes that they are also working with on this vision. This is a global perspective, by the way, not just about traditional values in the Western civilization or those from certain books of old. This is not that kind of vision. Those are wisdom words, but often held lightly in the future. They will be held lightly instead of gripped for life by many. Okay? You hold lightly to the values of others, and you go into your own vision as soul, and you understand that we're all creating together. So when you want to go more outside of the what's right for me versus what's right for us as souls, that's when you start to see the fluidity of who we are. We don't let others disregard us as part of the puzzle and also the answer. So the us is the answer to the we, right? So when we say we're here as Brenda, but we're also very much in our own minds and ways of being, right? It's not a mind vision. It's a consciousness of soul vision. This is who she is, and this is how she taps into the nature of who we are. It's the consciousness that is it's an embodiment of who she is as soul that reaches to those other souls for who she needs to hear from first and foremost. Her father was one vision she heard from, and it was a hard soul to hear from in certain ways, but in honor. She's all, my dad always loved me, but his soul was very much more disconnected from who she was, letting her express her wisdom in her own way. She doesn't have this vision of a heavenly father as much as she does, I travel the realms of love of all. in the search for my Father, right? Not even close. She's not working for any Father vision. She's looking for the vision of the love of all in essence. And what happens is that many who get disregarded in that vision will often say, oh, I didn't hear from so-and-so, and they're my love of my life. She's heard from all of her soulmates in essence, except for those that are coming sooner rather than later. Because certain souls are saying, I can't handle the vision of a possibility of possession, because that is where George Clooney was saying, yeah, that vision of religion is very strong in the idea that there are only certain souls who are able to communicate with the dead. They're not dead, they are of light, right? That's another vision of duality. So this is why Brenda doesn't operate in the idea of light and dark and good and bad, or, heaven and hell. It doesn't make sense to her, because those are vibrational words only. They're not the reality of the souls that often portrayed them as such. She's had to work through that idea of one person's heaven is another person's hell. Let's put it that way. Okay? So, another tip for the love is, let's be wise in our words when we speak to others. Let's be wise in our words. When we say, I love you, let's really mean it. Let's not just say it to be saying it. It's an offhand vision, but the love is indeed there for all of us. And we do reunite in it on the other side of the veil. But what happens is many are trying to bypass the nature of it's like the love lesson of how do we express our hearts to those who actually feel good for us. Right? Brenda's like, oh, your soul, it fits like a glove. Your own soul fits like a glove. It's not needed to sit there and constantly remind you that you're loved, cherished, and adored, because you know what it is. It's the honest integrity of your heart and your soul coming together, beating as one. You will feel it as such. It's not an outward expression from somebody else that's going to get you to that place of love of self, by the way. It's about the internal being that comes through and says, I am. That's his wisdom, by the way. And those who are in those ideas of souls from past will understand that that was one of the biggest messages at that moment, was the I am. And it's the declaration of who we are as love embodied in this vision on this plane. That's what he did. Okay? There are others who have done that vision. There are others who have done their own soul work and have risen in the vision of it and aside from it, because they're in union as we work together as one to create this beautiful plane we call the earth plane. And that's where most people are operating from. Now, when we traverse the realms of love from different planes or different dimensions, that's when it can get a little scary for people, but we're going to keep it simple again and keep it here, okay? Another vision of love for all of us is, I love who I am as I am in each moment of each breath. It means we don't degrade ourselves for having bad days, weeks, months, or even years, okay? We are often in the spellbound state with Brenda. She's spellbound by who she is in many ways, because she's like, wow, I feel very wise. And then I have my moments of discontent, because I'm like, oh, I know I'm not in the same place I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And I know that the love is still there, but I don't feel the same way. And others are not accepting of that, right? Others will say, I'm not accepting of the nature that our relationship has changed. So that is another disconnect vision that she had with another soul, which was, I realized I was looking for love in the wrong places and spaces. That's what many are starting to find out. As we age, we start to come into more of a perspective of, I love who I am as I am, and then we attract those who are also in the vision of, I love who I am as I am, and that feels beautiful for Brenda. Versus, I need you to complete me. You are not, you're not a broken piece of a puzzle. You're a part of it. Now, we're not going to degrade any experience, because Brenda had her moment of agreeing with someone who said, you're shattered into 1,000 pieces. And then we got older. We said, I'm pretty flipping good for who I am. I don't portray myself as broken or needing to be fixed. I just want to discover the beauty of who I am from a different perspective. perhaps. That's what a lot of people do, right? I want a different perspective of who I am, and so I'm going to look for someone who can give me a more unique perspective of who I am as a soul, and who can love me for who I am. And that takes guts. It takes guts to say, love me for who I am. When you're in this soul's vision, she says it's not easy to even get there on our own, much less with somebody else, because we're always compromising in many ways. That's where a lot of people are. That's the nature of compromise. But when you go to that vision of, if I'm compromising, can I shift the dynamic to where we are more of collaboration with each other, which has a more the intonation is more of, we're enjoying our work together. We're enjoying our spaces together. We're enjoying our hearts together. And others are just fine being content in their relationships. But if you're not content with who you are you going to be content with who someone else is? And is that what you want to work with? So this is the nature of looking within and saying, where am I at in my own vibration? Right? People may not like that word, but it could be, where am I at in my own mind? Do I feel good about who I am? Am I happy with who I am? Brenda's in a very serious moment that's outlasting many of the past that she's had, correct? No, she vibrated out of the victimhood, but now she's in this work of art of, let's talk about what love means for all of us here on this plane. And as she was getting ready, she heard, we need a global soul's vision for a global vision. We need a global perspective for a global vision. Okay, that's really what it was. We need a global perspective for a global vision. And that means those souls who can unite themselves, not only within their own heart, but those around the world. And that takes a different kind of understanding about who we pick on, right? How many people are saying, I'm accepting of Putin as a player in the game of life, versus he's doing what he does for his family, friends, and loved ones as well. See, this is why people are looking at the idea that Brenda has more under her sleeve, right? Is she a trickster? No. So we're not going to go into the nature of trying to convince anybody that they have to have good feelings about anybody in order to be loving to society. Okay, some of us are just more diplomatic, and that can be another love lesson, is our diplomacy not only within our own lives, but with others. Okay, we have to sometimes be diplomatic with ourselves and realize that we can have those internal battles going on that say that there's good and bad in who we are, and instead say, wait a minute, if I was placing this on somebody else, how would I handle that? So we want people to sit there and also be more self-reflective and ask themselves the question, if I were to tell somebody else this, would I be as kind and gentle to myself as I would be to somebody else? And sometimes that needs to be reversed. If you're very kind and considerate and loving to yourself, sometimes you need to embody more of that for others around you and say, wouldn't I want that for them? That's where Brenda usually lands, is, would I want this for everybody? Those are those soft-spoken souls now that say, oh boy, right? What do we want for everybody, right? Economic prosperity is where most people are, but this is about the love of it. And many are saying it's a big problem right now. But in essence, part of that means that we have to be considerate and kind and understanding of those who are saying, I don't even put that on my radar. I'm more about me, or I'm more about my family. And that's the dynamic that we're in, and the dynamic of love that many are struggling with at this moment. So we would say, let's be open to our hearts coming into the wisdom of who we are really, truly wanting to unite with. Because that's where people have to be honest. There are a lot of people are hearing the vision of, I love everybody, but then the mind is telling them something different. And that's where Brenda is working. She's saying, I'm hearing from those souls that I used to work with a long time ago, and I belittled some of their visions because it wasn't in alignment with who I am in this moment. But instead of that, I could have said, thank you for the wisdom that you granted me. And now I have the experience of contrast to compare my life with and figure out what feels better for me or my family, right? My family of old versus my family of new, right? And many of us are uniting in the wisdom of what's coming versus what has been. So this is the idea of many are looking back thinking that was the golden moment of glory for everybody. But in all honesty, I think we all understand that that is not necessarily the case, nor will it be anytime soon. We have a lot of exploration and discovery of ourselves first and foremost before we make that kind of declaration is coming anytime soon. Okay? Now, we want this to be one of those wisdoms where people will start to get the tips. Brenda is more about the tipster of soul, right? She didn't come up with that title. So if it's not 10 or 20, don't hold it against her. But she says, be open and kind and loving to yourselves first and foremost. And then you will start to see when others are not doing that. Okay? We want people to understand that that is the nature of where many are in their hearts. They're being battered either by themselves or those around them. And we want you to understand that sometimes those lessons are, it's better to be in a situation of safety versus a situation of conflict. Others are saying they want to be, secure in their wisdom versus I'm prosperous, but I'm alone. Okay, everyone has different desires about what means what for them and what's loving for them. And so we want people to be more exploratory with the idea of what love means for them and those around them. You can see the love if you look for it. So we want you to look for the love in your partners, in your family members, and in your wisdom. And even if they are embodying the wisdom of I'm of hate for many, ask themselves the question, why might that be? And if it's because of some trauma or pain that has yet to have been discovered, it could be that they are in alignment with a change that is trying to break us free from the constriction of love asunder. We have discovered that love asunder means that many are not feeling the love that they claim they hold on to. Okay? It means that many are saying, I was meant to be with this person forever, and they left this plane, and now I'm denied the beauty of that wisdom. Right? That's not true. So many are thinking that this means that you suddenly decide to go into another person's arms and that it's going to feel the same way. Each relationship has its own unique flavor of love everlasting. And that's what we want others to understand. Be open to the idea that the love is everlasting. It's just that it's not meant to feel as if it was a pleasant experience. And that's where there's wisdom there that many will deny, other than my pain shot me to another level of love of life, perhaps, or love of another. And that's what we want people to understand. And sometimes people love other people for different reasons. And we want you to understand that many men will say that they have love attached to them that they don't want. That's another vision. So be careful with those who claim they are fans, perhaps, and that they are of love for the idea of someone. So this is also about being true to who you are and being open and honest about who you are to people who then say, oh, I didn't know this about you, and this is a no-brainer for me. I no longer can connect with you because you weren't honest with me in the first place. If we have those hidden agendas or those hidden wisdoms, then we need to be more open ahead of time so we can allow for people to explore themselves with my wisdom is also my glory. It's also my experience of who I am. It's also about being vulnerable to attack, perhaps if someone else comes in and says, oh, I'm a Republican, but I love your work, but I don't agree with your political ideology, perhaps, or vice versa, or whatever the issue may be that's of conflict, you often can work it out. Others will say, no way, that's a no-brainer at this point. But what we're saying is that on the soul level, we often have those family members, friends, acquaintances, or whatnot that are not as vocal in their ideologies because they hold it dear that those were the things that were to be held close to the cuff, kind of, or it's more close to themselves. Like, we're not supposed to be discussing that. But if you don't discuss that in this day and age, in this country, it can often be the idea of we're colluding together, right? Or we're doing this. Brenda thinks that some souls are saying, I'm Republican, others are saying they're Democrats, others are saying they're this, that, or whatnot. We don't want you to focus so much on political ideology, but we want you to focus on the nature of how certain systems or ideas can hold us back from the love that we actually share with those people who brought us to that understanding of what a more traditional or conservative family was like, versus now I am in a more liberal and a more liberal family that's more open to experience others from other nations, perhaps, or other sorts of systems or whatnot. And Brenda's like, I've enmeshed myself with so many souls that sometimes I have to come into myself and say, where do I really stand? Right? And she gets told she's the bleeding heart liberal, but in essence, she's like, go ahead and put that label on me, define liberal, because for her, it's like that's what a lot of soul will be taken as. I'm generous with my heart. And if that's a bad thing, then okay, I understand. I had to work with the nature of what constriction of my soul was, and that was the nature of the constriction of my own heart for myself and for my own soul's vision, because I felt like I was being deceived at one point by my family member about who he was or who he thought he was. And then it opens up to the nature of the love of all. Okay, and then all of a sudden everyone wants to come in and say, oh, I need you to love me for who I am, but they're not even willing to look at me as a source of wisdom, rather than I need you to get me a certain outcome, but I don't want to do the work or the inner reflection or the inner discovery. I just want you to get me my future. That's a psychic vision. That's what Brenda can do. So we want everyone to understand, not everyone's being asked to go, deep diving into who they are, because it could be you aren't meant to. It could be that you are meant to be a free-spirited soul that just loves who you are and you move through this world as you do. Okay? So it's not about defining yourself according to anyone else's standards. Okay? That's another thing for you. Look at your identities and ask yourself, am I really feeling beautiful for who I am in this label that someone has either placed upon me or I have taken on myself, and maybe I've outgrown it, or maybe it never fit in the first place. So this is another tip. Identify those values, beliefs, and identities. Identities are going to be some of the hardest thing to change if it needs to be changed. Right? Those are usually those things that are placed upon you, and your soul will let you know whether it fits good or not. Brenda feels good as a female, and that's just the way she is. She also feels good as the idea of I have preferences of a certain personality type, but I'm leaving that behind slowly because I embody the vision of so many other souls that I sometimes feel like I could just be extroverted today or introvert. I don't think about it. I don't identify with anything like that when I walk through my day, and most people don't. So most people aren't walking through their day with labels coming to them in their head. That's why your soul is your wisdom. You're experiencing the wisdom of who you are from various ideas and concepts, but your experiences are more fluid and neutral. In many ways, most people are not in a constant state of conflict, but we tend to focus on the conflict. So let's focus on where we can come together. What issues are we aligned with, right? Or what experiences are we wanting to create together? That's another love tip. What kind of experience do I want with another person? Do I want to have joy and fame, or do I want to have, sexual release and religion? Or it could, or it could be, do I want to have, the space and time to create by myself a lot? Or do I want to spend all my time with my loved one, experiencing them for who they are and me as I am together? Joining as one is what many think they're coming together with, but it's really more about the melding of our souls together, rather than the idea that we're all just, one big gloop of soul. Okay, the vibrations of who we are come together very well, and we fit together very well. That's where a lot of people are. We massage our egos with our values a lot. And Brenda is very much of that. She's like, oh, I know how to do that too. But it's honestly the growth path that I took was about knowing the nature of my ego and knowing the nature of my own inner discovery, first and foremost, of who I was, through the eyes of others in many ways. And sometimes that can be a painful process as well. And so we want Brenda and you as souls to understand that you are all loved, cherished, and adored by your soul. We want you to feel the love as much as possible, but you have to be open to receiving it, and you have to be open to seeing it. So you might have to shift the glasses that you're looking through when you walk out your door, or even within your household, and say, where can I see the love in this moment? And it can be something simple, very simple, as a simple, I love you for who you are, right? How many people are able to say that to somebody? Versus, I need you to be something that you aren't. That's where a lot of people are. We compromised our values, or we compromised our vision, or we thought there was something wrong with who we were, and so we latched onto someone else because it made us feel like they were part of the puzzle to complete us on some aspect that we're missing. And that's not necessarily the case, but we can definitely learn from others and experience others, and then we can garner the wisdom for them and from them. Okay, so I want to say thank you for watching. Make sure you watch and see if the title changes. It's going to be because these tips were not numbered. They were just a general idea of how many tips people were hoping they would get. It's how many sources of wisdom will often come to her and say, I'm part of that vision. I'll have 20 different sources of wisdom that can come through to me and for me in one single session. But it's a united vision often, okay? And so it will often come through as the idea that we're all there beating together as one. That's the nature of our souls, to be honest. We're all creating. We just don't all see the aspects or benefits of that kind of vision, okay? So take care. Have a wonderful day. And as always, stay curious, wise, and soulful. Have a great day.